I think the welcome to the research in the science of the I was talking about how it's even like if you look at something you can find something to see, most people do this, people know far along, starting to create if you do start, if you seems to be close to the sense and just about yourself, trying to be done with this. And you have if you comes to be out of it, like schools, basically comments that simply will see sense in terms of the philosophy of citizens and also online, so you must these are really all the regulations, not really include other insights. I remember that I would say to it's my problem, it's the way it needs to be, it's like, I'm always like the best person that I feel. Just after the some
I'll have a go at speaking. I'm not sure if you can hear us, colleagues, at your end. It's totally incomprehensible at this end online, so just so you know. Thank you.
Yes, it continues. See. My is that's the same the same the possible speed. The right situation, those should be expected with us. Even we can have feeling as letters, last week's indeed last week's those saying everything else. Commentary bodies of science and physics assisted with the science space So I really need to I'm still going to follow the and what do you know, in laws that they need to that's the right to be but side into the regulation from and it's two issues related to the personalization so the exchange of surrounding elements from the issues of and finance the report
hiking, and so all the indicators are that this issue is going to get worse, and so we do need government intervention. And to put it into perspective, colleagues, already only halfway through the year we are something like £750,000 over budget with the support of those homeless individuals and families within our borough, and it just isn't sustainable. So we need some support from government, and we are hoping that the Chancellor will announce something next week. So they're the three main issues that I wish to raise with you within the corporate performance. Other than that, performance is particularly strong, as you'll note. And finally, the one point I did raise as well was the fact that the challenges that we'd had within Gateway and the introduction of the new systems in there, they have significantly improved. And I thank Councillor Ian Watkinson and all the staff and ask them for the work that they've done jointly together to make that experience and waiting for our residents much more better. Just moving on then, there were 8 recommendations that came from the Corporate Performance and Budget Scrutiny Committee that were being asked to adopt. The first one was to thank the Leader and Chief Exec for our report, which I'm happy to accept. Thank you. The next one was welcomes initial feedback on the new social prescribing service. I think we're happy to accept that as well, because that is going really well. The next recommendation and comment was they were grateful for the offer of a demonstration of the Chorley and South Ribble Partnerships Data and Intelligence Dashboard. I think we're happy to adopt that. Recommendation 4 was requested that a detailed customer service performance information be provided to the committee every six months. And I think, Chris, we agreed on that would be the Q1 and Q3 reports, was it? Or was it the... But yes, we're happy to accept that as well, rather than quarterly. The next recommendation was the committee asked that information be provided on any potential funding sources that could be used to continue the health check screening programme. Again, I've asked Chris to write to Lancashire County Council and the government, because the reason that funding has ceased is because the County Council and the government have sought the funding, but we'll write to them and see if there's any additional funding available to support that programme moving forward. So we're happy to accept that. Yeah. Recommendation 6 was the committee asked us to create a task group to explore the challenges of homelessness and temporary accommodation within the borough. So I've spoken to Councillor Claire Hunter, the portfolio holder, and as long as Cabinet support the recommendation tonight, we're going to ask her to write to the Scrutiny Committee, ask the 3 members of the Scrutiny Committee to come and support a task group that reports back to Cabinet in the new year. Claire, yeah, is everyone happy to support that? Yeah. Then the committee suggested that the Community and External Scrutiny Committee look at how our housing partners and others are working together to reduce housing waiting lists in South Ribble. Yeah, happy to do that. It's what the Scrutiny Committee is for, so we'll endorse that. And finally, they asked that the council tax and business rate collection rate performance is reviewed and included any trend information and comparisons with others. Now, we're happy to accept that as well, but just to put in perspective, the issue that was raised was on something like a 0.1% decrease in collection rates based on Q2 this year, Matthew, wasn't it, in Q2 last year, which equates to about £16 out of every 10,000 or something. So it isn't a significant issue. It was made a significant issue, but it's not. We've looked into it, but we're happy to report those trends, and then it can be looked at in more detail if there is a concern. So I'm happy to accept the recommendations as presented. Are they seconded, please?
Seconded.
Right. Okay. So we're going to need to vote on this then. Because we've accepted those recommendations. It's been proposed and seconded. Everyone in? Oh no. We'll ask for comments. Let's vote on it first, and then we'll ask for. No, go on. Sorry. Any comments from any members not on Cabinet? Sorry, first.
Yeah, thanks. It was a lively scrutiny committee, but I guess that's what scrutiny should be like, and nobody could argue that this report has not been adequately scrutinised. And I think actually the vast majority of the recommendations are completely reasonable, and I'm glad we're going to support them. The stuff on the town deal, it does feel like things are now beginning to fall into place after some months of difficult negotiations. Interesting that the bit of the scrutiny committee that spoke about that got some quite positive coverage in the local media, including a very supportive comment from a market trader. And I think it's really important now that we speak to those traders about what the options are for them during the undoubted inconvenience is going to be as we get on to working on the market hall. But the coverage was really positive, and it was really nice actually to hear that particular market trader saying how pleased they were that everything was coming together, and acknowledging that they were going to go through a difficult time, but they just wanted to be included. The interesting thing, whatever happens to them, they want to be relocated together as a market and not spread around in different little corners of Leyland. And I think that was a really interesting comment, but it was really positive, the stuff that was there.
Yeah, thanks, Matt. It was, and they are at their own community there, aren't they? And they do serve the community well. And I can confirm it is the desire of the council to relocate them together and get them moved back in as quickly as possible. Because if you remember, we discussed this at the previously, that you could try and do the refurbishment works around the existing businesses, but that just wouldn't work. It wouldn't necessarily be the better option for us. So relocating is what the plan has always been, and that will hopefully happen quite quickly in the new year. Because I do believe, my recollection is that it's quite high on the critical path to get the market refurbished as quickly as we can and get the traders back in. Councillor Blinsky-Gelder.
Thanks, Leader. I want to just speak about the report itself. I think that it's easy to get these reports every 3 months, wash over them, and because we get them so frequently. I just want to make a couple of comments. I want to thank the officers. These are really detailed. They're constantly monitoring everything the council's doing, all the directorates, all the staff, and they present these reports in what I think is a really good way to easy for people to understand. And in saying that, what I would love to do is invite anyone watching, anybody, to look at these reports, because I think the indicators actually have everyday relevance to people in terms of if they call the call centre, they'll get the answered, the environmental things that we're doing, the thriving communities, the assets, everything, all the indicators are relevant, I think, and people would find them useful to look at. I just want to talk just the report generally. Thanks.
Yeah, thanks, Daniela, because we tend to dwell on any exceptions, don't we, in the report? So when 95% of the authorities is continuing to work really well, we don't tend to dwell on that, and it's a very good point to raise. Councillor Alty.
Just a brief comment, really. I was surprised, given the last report that we've just dealt with, that in this report, the focus or one of the recommendations was around the deficit in collections of amounts owed, when in the previous report, we were talking about a cost of living crisis, the rising rates of homelessness. And it just surprises me that we've put so much focus on wanting more information about this the amount that is owed, when we're trying proactively and repeatedly, time and time again, to address the homelessness in a proactive way. And this seems to it seems out of sync with the proactive approach that we're taking to so many other things. So I just wanted to know that. Thanks.
No, thanks, Jackie. Very good point. Yeah, very good point. Any members not on Cabinet have any points to raise on the quarterly performance report? Any members not on Cabinet Councillor Lou Jackson.
Thank you, Leader. As regards point 7, I'd be happy to take this back to the Community and External Scrutiny Committee next week to look at how our housing partners and others are working together to reduce housing waiting lists in South Ribble. Okay, that's all I wanted to say.
I welcome that as well. And I'm looking forward to setting up the focus group. I don't think we've given enough information to councillors what this council does and thinking outside the box. So I've got all the information. We'll discuss it at the focus group, and then also discuss it within ourselves as well, because it's amazing how we are thinking outside the box. And now with the social prescribers, we're more about prevention rather than cure, which is another amazing thing. So any questions or anything like that, just ask.
And if I can just come back with that, when we had the discussion last week, talking about out of the box, we have to think out of the box because we're in very extraordinary circumstances of how we're going to deal with future housing, either temporary or permanent.
No, I'm absolutely right, Lou. It's heartbreaking, some of the situations that we're experiencing and dealing with now. Clearly, we can't speak about them because they're confidential. But when I walk in the Civic Centre the other day and there's a pram there and a young baby and 2 suitcases, it brings it home to the chronic situation that our community find ourselves in. And we've got in temporary housing, in single rooms, families. And there's just, it needs dealing with. And this is why this work that Councillor Claire Hunter is going to do is critically important. We need to work together with this.
If I can just come back, and at that time we likened it to a war situation. And it is a war situation if we've got children on the streets, mothers coming into the Civic Centre saying they're homeless, and everything else that they're having to deal with. So.
Yeah, because the other concern that we have now is, and I think it was announced today in the government somewhere, is the desire of the government to close down the immigration hotels, as they name them. And we've already got huge evidence in other areas of the country that those individuals that are housed there for a reason is that they've not got their asylum yet, and they have nowhere to live. And so the chronic situation could be getting worse. And we need to be in a position that somehow we deal with it with or without the government support. So it's an important piece of work, and I look forward to receiving that report in the new year. Any members on Teams have anything to add on this agenda item? No? Right, so I can now go to the vote. So we've had the discussions around the recommendations. We've accepted them with the 1 or 2 tweaks that we've added there. It's been proposed and seconded. All those in favour? Okay, thank you. Right, moving on to agenda item 6 is the Capital and Balance Sheet Monitoring Report for Q2, and it's Councillor Matthew Tomlinson to present this item.
Yeah, thanks, Leader. And with your permission, I'll do 6 and 7 together, both the capital and the revenue monitoring report. So this is the report of the state of the council's financial position at the end of Q2. Louise can't be with us tonight, but I'm sure that any questions that weren't brought up at scrutiny between me, the leader, and the chief exec will be able to field them appropriately. The chief exec's body language says different, but I'm sure we'll be fine. I have to say this is a very pleasing report when it's compared to Q1 monitoring report. Members will recall that at Q1 we were forecasting an overspend for the whole year of about £360,000, and now we're looking at a figure of less than 60,000. I have to say, as I said at scrutiny, these are all projections based on where we are at the moment. So, you know, we haven't overspent by £60,000 yet, but what this report is telling us is that if things continue throughout the year, by the end of the year, that's where we'll be. In the capital programme, people will see that there is a significant amount in cash terms of slippage. So that's money we said we would spend this financial year, but we're only actually going to spend it in the next financial year. The vast majority of that is tied up with the town deal and the development next door. So I give this commitment to members. We are going to spend that money. We are going to invest in our communities. We are going to deliver on the things that we said we would, but we're just not going to be able to do it quite as quickly as we originally thought when we were setting the budget. It's worth noting as well, in item number 6, we remain debt-free, and we're predicting by the end of the year we will still be debt-free. There's one change that I want to point out, which is at the bottom of page 31 to our reserves. We've been holding a reserve from some funding we were given by the government during the pandemic to help us offset companies who wouldn't be able to pay their business rates. Now that we're 2 years on, we've still sat on some of that money because we haven't needed as much as the government predicted, which is good news because it means the companies in South Ribble managed to keep going with support, and I keeping on paying their business rates. But I don't want us to have that money just sat in a pot with no idea what we're going to do with it. It's not ring fenced. We don't have to send it back. So the idea is that we set up a vehicles and plant replacement program, so that when a road sweeper or a grass cutter or a refuse collection vehicle needs replacing, we've got a fund there so we can just replace it and not borrow the money and pay it back over a period of time. I think that's a sensible suggestion of spending that money, and I hope that Cabinet agree with me too. Just on the revenue, looking at how things have changed from last time, we've had some grant funding in that we didn't know we was going to get, so that's really useful. The staff, I believe, now have agreed on the pay issue, so that is fixed. We know what that pressure is going to be, but it is a pressure, because we did budget very wisely for a 5% increase when councils around here budgeted for 2 and 3%. I think to budget for 2 or 3%, frankly, was ignoring the runes. But we got some really good advice from our financial staff. Budgeted for 5%, it's come through at nearly 7%. So we're going to have to find that. So that is a pressure on our budget, but it's not the pressure that some other councils are experiencing. We're continuing to do some work with the waste refuse collection budget, and clearly I think at the end of the year we are going to overspend on that, and we'll have to look at reprofiling that budget next year so that it is an accurate amount of money for what the service costs. And as has already been alluded to, we're spending way more on homelessness than we've ever spent before, and certainly four, maybe 5 times what we budgeted. At least that's what we are projecting. We did get a tiny grant from the government to help us with the extra pressure, which frankly is not touching the sides. So I'm glad to hear that the leader has written to the Chancellor, along with district council leaders. It has to be said from right across the political spectrum. So it's not, this is not a party political issue. There are councils on the South Coast that are saying they're now spending 30 to 40% of their entire budget on homelessness. And that is simply not sustainable. All the other details are in the report. If anybody wants to ask any questions, I'll be absolutely delighted to field them off to the Chief Executive, whilst making reassuring noises first. But much healthier position than we were showing at Q1. And I'm confident that with the diligence of our finance staff, that will continue throughout the financial year. I'm happy to move the recommendations in both reports. I know you're going to ask me about the Scrutiny Committee's recommendations, and I'm hoping you've got them for me.
Thanks, Matt. Yeah, and it is it's a commendable position we find ourselves in, colleagues. If you recall, we haven't raised council tax for the last 3 years. We're in we've had to absorb 2 equivalents of 7% pay increases for our staff, and rightly so, with no support whatsoever from the government, and we're still debt free and with quite substantial reserves as well. So we're in a strong, as a district councils go, we're in a very, very strong position, one of the strongest positions in Lancashire, to be fair. So it is a commendable position. So before we take any questions for Councillor Tomlinson, let's just go through quickly, if I may, the 4 recommendations that the Scrutiny Committee asked us to consider. As usual, the first one, we thanked Matthew for coming along in, and the Principal Management Accountant, and fielding the questions. They asked them for an update on the timescales for the next stage of the Penwith Master Plan to be provided to the committee. Well, actually, I think let's watch this space, because there may be an announcement before the next committee on that, so which is good news. So we'll happily accept that recommendation, colleagues. The next recommendation was it was grateful for the offer of further information being provided on the external funding budgets that are at a risk of being returned, and steps being taken to spend these budgets. Again, we'll accept that, and we'll put that in the next quarterly report. And looks forward to more detailed information being provided on the COVID recovery reserve. But again, I don't recall that one either, because that has actually already been provided to all councillors following the last council meeting. I understand, Chief Exec. There was a note went out from Louise to all councillors. Well, a note's gone out to all the group leaders on the COVID reserve, because if you recall, colleagues, there was some inaccurate statements made around the COVID recovery reserve. So I don't think we need to accept that final recommendation, but we'll just double check that the group leaders were provided with that information. I thought it went out to all councillors. If it hasn't, the group leaders can therefore forward them. But we're happy to accept the other recommendations, yeah. So just on this, Matthew, then, so we have to split this into two. So on agenda item 6, the Cabinet's asked to note the 23-24 forecast outturn for revenue and the level of reserves based on the position as at the 30th of September. So we all duly note that. We're asked to note the variance made to and from the revenue budget during the year as detailed in Appendix 2 of the report that Matthew's presented. So we're happy to note that. What we are asked to vote on is to approve the revised capital programme attached to Appendix A of agenda item 6, which includes approved amendments to the programme as detailed within the report since the last capital monitoring report was approved by Cabinet in September 2023. So you propose that, Matthew. I'm happy to second that. Can we all vote on that, please? Okay, that's unanimous. Then on agenda item 7, we were asked to note the variance made to and from the revenue budget during the year as detailed in Appendix 2 of the report. So that's duly noted. However, we are asked to, it's just to note the 2023-24 forecast outturn for revenue and the level of reserves based on the position as at the 30th of September 2023. That's duly noted, yeah. And then Matthew has proposed, and I've seconded, that we accept the recommendations of the scrutiny committee, other than the final one, which we believe has already been dealt with. We have to take a vote on that, colleagues. So it's proposed and seconded. All in favour? That's unanimous. Any questions from any members not on Cabinet or online on the budget position? Councillor Michael Green.
Thanks, Chairman. I'm just curious as to that information may have been shared with the group leaders, but scrutiny asked for that information. So I'm just curious as to why you don't wish to share it directly with the scrutiny committee.
We didn't say we couldn't do, Councillor Green. What we said is we don't recall it actually being said at the scrutiny committee is number one. Number two, that it's already been shared with the group leaders, and we're going to ask the group leaders to share that information with councillors. It's already been provided. That's all that Cabinet said, and we can get Louise to send the note out again if your leader hasn't sent it to you. Actually, we'll send it to the chair of the scrutiny committee additionally as well. Okay. Everyone happy? Any more questions? No. Okie dokie. It's the final agenda item, which is agenda item 8, which is the let me just double check, sorry. Yeah, agenda item 8, which is the property valuation services procurement, and it's Councillor Matthew Tomlinson, who has 3 minutes. Thank you.
Yeah, thank you, Leader. I'll speak very slowly for a while, but I'm not going to win. So item 8 is to seek member approval to engage in a joint procurement exercise with Chorley and with Blackburn with Darwen Council to procure property valuation services for assets within the council's portfolio. As part of our accounting procedures and as part of our audit procedures as well, we are required to come up with a valuation for all the property and assets that we hold as a council. This is a very technical job that we need someone from outside to come and do it, and that's better for our audit processes as well. The suggestion is that we get together with both Chorley and Blackburn with Darwen, so we can go out to the market in a stronger position. So the report itemises how and why we intend to do that. We do need to do this. All this is saying is the way that we do it, but we do have to find a way of valuing our assets. It's a statutory requirement. It seems to me that going out with 2 neighbouring councils to offer the work with 3 councils will make it a much more attractive proposition for a company to come and do it. So the recommendation is that you agree that cabinet members agree to the procurement exercise being a collaborative one with Chorley and Blackburn with Darwen, and then delegate authority to the cabinet member for finance to agree the route to contract and agree the scoring methodology and the scoring matrix. I accept it's quite dry stuff, but it's important that we get it right. I'm happy to move those recommendations.
Thanks, Matthew. Yeah, it is it's one of those rather mundane but exceptionally important statutory responsibilities that we have to do in the revaluation of the portfolio, and it's good to see, Matthew, and please thank the officers that we're giving ourselves 13 months leeway here. You know, Cabinet has been critical historically of officers coming to us quite late with contract renewals, but this isn't actually due for renewal until December of next year. So that's pleasing to see. We've got some time here. We're going in with our partner councils, and we should definitely get best value for money. So I'm more than happy to second that proposal. Any colleagues on Cabinet have any queries or questions for Matthew? Any members not on Cabinet have any questions or queries on this proposal? So it's been proposed, it's been seconded. All those in favour? Thank you, that's unanimous. And so, thanks everyone for attending the meeting of the Cabinet this evening. I do apologise to members that dialed in of the challenges that we had at the beginning with the Teams link. Hope you all enjoyed the meeting, and see you all at Council next week. Thank you.